Gambinos were one of the most powerful families of the five in New York.
Carlo Gambino was running the largest, most extensive criminal empire in the United States at the time.
Castellano felt he still had enough muscle men, enough power. That no one...
It's known that within the hidden realm, fortune favors the brave, and breaking loyalty can be deadly. From monstrous kingpins to their merciless enforcers, you're about to hear enthralling stories of supremacy, betrayal, and the darker side of the American dream. This episode will introduce some infamous members of the American La Cosa Nostra, or LCN, the family also known as the Sicilian Mafia. You'll learn about some of their kingpins with their power over the criminal organizations, their illegal activities and demands of loyalty, and some enforcers who guarantee their boss's loyalty, keep order within the secretive enterprises, and mete out violent justice to opponents. A number of organized crime groups have existed in the United States for many years, from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre to the killing of mobster Bugsy Siegel. These events have showcased the cruelty and authority struggles within perhaps the most well-known organized crime group in the US, the Mafia. We'll explore the organizational hierarchy of the Mafia, in particular, the role of the kingpins and the enforcers. So tune in now for another bite-sized episode from Crime Watch HQ, the Gangland Chronicles. From Mafia Kingpins to enforcers, the thriving world of organized crime in the US. The US is a beautiful country, greeting millions of tourists each year with its incredible natural landscapes and vibrant cities. However, there's something else that has made this country famous, or should that be infamous? And that is the organized crime group known as the Mafia, with the most well-known family being La Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia. Governed by a strict hierarchy, the role of the kingpin, otherwise known as the boss, the Don, or the Godfather, is an important role filled by ruthless men who have the ability to inspire loyalty within their family. Charles Lucky Luciano is one example of a powerful kingpin in the US Mafia. He was born on November 24, 1897 in Lurcara, Fritti, Sicily, before immigrating to the US in 1906 when his parents moved to New York City in the hope of finding a better living. However, once Luciano started school, he was constantly in trouble and even arrested for theft when he was just 10 years old. At the age of 14, he dropped out of school and was in and out of prison many times as a teenager for theft. In the 20th century, he became one of the most powerful mafia bosses, famous for his involvement in several criminal activities, including illegal gambling, narcotics trafficking, and labor racketeering. Charles Luciano was a Sicilian mafioso whose criminal activities helped grow his influence, and under his leadership, the mafia invaded some of America's largest unions. Through the use of violence and corruption, they gained control of the transport, port, construction, hotel, and catering workers' unions. This control involved blackmailing employers and robbing union pension funds of millions of dollars. Luciano played a significant role in the organization and development of the US arm of La Cosa Nostra Mafia. He became one of the most influential as well as respected figures in the family. Luciano's strategic abilities allowed him to maintain a considerable level of control over the criminal activities in New York City and beyond. And for decades, his decisions and insight shaped the direction of the Sicilian Mafia in the United States. During the Prohibition era, Luciano and his members profited from the illegal production, sale, and distribution of alcohol. They smuggled alcohol to meet the demand created by the countrywide ban. He was also heavily involved in gambling and controlled several illegal gambling operations such as sports betting and underground casinos. These illegal activities generated substantial income for him and his criminal organization. Luciano died in Naples, Italy on January 26, 1962 at the age of 64. After serving yet another prison sentence in the US, he was deported to Italy. From Italy, he continued to have authority over the Cosa Nostra Mafia in the United States until his death. As an organization, the Mafia involves a union of gangs or families that offer arbitration and protection services under the one umbrella name of Mafia. Their basic activities include protection racketeering, oversight, and organization of illegal deals, as well as transactions and settlement of disagreements between criminals. La Cosa Nostra grew to dominate other organized crime groups in many major U.S. cities during the 20th century, infiltrating the regular American business world not with arms, but with millions of dollars. Using gangster methods, La Cosa Nostra would attempt to establish monopolies in various industries. When that was achieved, prices would rise, and the populace would be hit with the price hikes. In other cases, companies were exploited, then bankrupted. Kingpins are responsible for overseeing the operations of their mafia family, establishing strategic decisions, and managing illicit mafia activities with their respective partners, while the designated soldiers and associates in the organization enforce their operations and perform often violent functions to protect the organizational interest. One of the most famous mafia enforcers is Bugsy Siegel. Like Luciano, he was also an important member of the Cosa Nostra Mafia. Born on the 28th of February 1906 in Brooklyn, New York, to an Austro-Hungarian Jewish family, Siegel was drawn to organized crime during the Prohibition era. In the mid-1930s, Siegel became a trusted associate of Luciano, who was one of the most famous and powerful mafia bosses at that time. Siegel played a major role in Luciano's efforts to set up a strong existence in the West Coast criminal world, while rubbing shoulders with Hollywood stars at the time. Siegel was involved in many criminal activities, including illegal smuggling, as well as the distribution of alcohol, theft, and gambling. He worked closely with organized crime groups to get earnings from the lucrative black market for alcoholic beverages. He was also involved in contract killing and was supposedly accountable for ordering and committing many murders, either to get rid of rival gang members or to enforce his power and defend his criminal interests. His activities were not limited to the Cosa Nostra Mafia. He had many connections with a variety of organized crime groups throughout his criminal career. Siegel was murdered at the age of 41. The circumstances regarding his death remain a subject of speculation, but it is believed that his murder was connected to conflicts in the organized crime world. Born on the 2nd of November 1935, Matthew Madonna is another prominent U.S. mafia figure linked with La Cosa Nostra. A renowned American mobster, he's a well-reputed capo or head of a crew of soldiers for the Lucchese crime family, one of the 5 families that controlled organized crime in New York. Madonna has faced many criminal charges throughout his involvement with the mafia, having been linked with various criminal activities such as drug trafficking, illegal gambling, extortion, gun trading, and racketeering. His position as a made man, meaning that he was officially sworn allegiance to his family, saw him refusing to turn informant for the government and receiving a longer prison sentence as a result. He was awarded for this loyalty by being appointed capo once he was released, then later was promoted to acting head of the family until a power play led to him giving up this role. As a high-ranking member of the Genovese crime family, Madonna has held important influence in the organization for years, even during long stints in prison. He's been associated with extortion, which involves getting money or other assets through power, intimidation, or threat, and was the key figure at the center of a racketeering scheme that netted over $400 million. Unfortunately for Madonna, however, it was his involvement in this scheme, along with the murder of East Harlem Purple Gang leader Michael Meldish, that landed him back in prison, where he is currently serving a life sentence. Joseph Bonanno is another example of a prominent figure of La Cosa Nostra in the U.S., specifically associated with the Bonanno family. The Bonanno crime family is a famous crime family that dominated the organized crime scene in New York for several decades. Bonanno was born on the 18th of January 1905 in Sicily to a family already involved in crime, and from the ages of 3 to 10, his family lived in New York before returning to Italy. Bonanno, however, slipped back into the U.S. in 1924 and began his criminal activities during the Prohibition era. By the age of 26, he became one of the youngest ever bosses of a major crime family and led the Bonanno family from the 1930s to the 1960s, playing an important role in the growth and impact of La Cosa Nostra Mafia influence in the United States. The main activities Bonanno was involved with included racketeering, illegal gambling, drug trafficking, and extortion. He was infamous for his influence and deadly authority over criminal activities within the La Cosa Nostra. In the 1960s, he was involved in a power struggle in his own crime family, which was known as the Bonanno War. He fled to Canada and disappeared for a while before eventually returning to retire to Arizona and writing his autobiography titled A Man of Honor, the autobiography of Joseph Bonanno. Surprisingly, Bonanno enjoyed a long life, finally passing away at age 97 in 2002 due to heart failure. Perhaps one of the most well-known names of the Italian-American Mafia, and again linked with La Cosa Nostra, is Carlo Gambino. He was the head of the Gambino crime family, one of the most authoritative and influential mafia families in New York. Gambino was born on the 24th of August 1902 in Sicily in Italy, and in 1921 he entered the US by stowing away on a boat. He was soon involved in criminal activities, particularly bootlegging. Under his leadership, the Gambino crime family grew in influence and power. He emphasized obedience, confidentiality, and strict organization in the family, making it one of the most terrifying mafia organizations, which was ruthless in removing opponents. Gambino's main activities included trade in illegal markets, illegal gambling, money laundering, protection and extortion rackets, and narcotics trafficking. He and his family were heavily involved in racketeering, exerting control over labor unions and extorting money from businesses through corrupt labor practices. He died on the 15th of October 1976 in Massapequa, New York, United States. The Cosa Nostra Mafia has had a strong presence in the US for over a century. Generally, the group follows a strict silence code called Omerta. This code values secrecy and loyalty and bans any kind of cooperation with law enforcement agents, and any person who does not obey the Omerta code is considered a traitor and treated accordingly. This code is why, even though there are some well-known personalities in the ranks of kingpins or enforcers, the details of their organizations and their families' business activities are always shrouded in secrecy. The Sicilian Mafia is far from holding the authority it amassed during the 20th century. With other mafia families now more notorious, the FBI warns that La Cosa Nostra still poses a threat, primarily in New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Detroit. Organized crime in the US is thriving, with today powerful mafia families taking over new areas of the economy and society and gripping new regions of the US using updated contemporary methods. Many of the traditional Sicilian mafia families and codes have disappeared, yet the legacy and the impact of their presence in the United States lives on, as do the names of some of their more well-known bosses and henchmen. Only time will tell if those names will be joined by new present-day kingpins and enforcers who are just as powerful and ruthless as those who've gone before.